Earlier today, exactly 1 month after Canadians learned of widespread corruption and political interference in the rule of law from the Prime Minister's office, Justin Trudeau finally faced Canadians. Over the last 4 weeks, Mr. Trudeau has been credibly accused by his own Attorney General, Jody-Wilson, of politically interfering in the criminal prosecution of a well-connected engineering firm. It's now beyond dispute that he and his office bullied and threatened Ms. Wilson-Raybould in an attempt to get her to let SNC-Lavalin off the hook. When she resisted these attempts, he fired her. The seriousness and severity of what is at stake for our country cannot be overstated. The rule of law is our oldest constitutional principle. It is a fundamental pillar of our democracy. From it, we derive our freedom. And over the last month, Conservatives have witnessed Justin Trudeau and their Prime Minister corrupt that very rule of law and try in vain to cover it up. Since this affair became public, Mr. Trudeau has lost 2 cabinet ministers and his closest political advisor. The House of Commons Justice Committee is investigating. 5 former attorneys general have said the RCMP should consider criminal charges. And Justin Trudeau has been hunkered down in damage control, leaving the ship of state without a captain. Justin Trudeau is always using phony excuses around protecting jobs, to which I would say 2 things. First, neither Mr. Trudeau nor Mr. Wernick or Mr. Butts have provided any evidence to back up their claims that jobs would be lost should their attempts to interfere fail. In fact, they received direct questions as to whether or not they had any reports or studies to back up their claim. They admitted that they had not even looked into that suggestion. Trudeau's interference was not about jobs. It was about protecting a Liberal-linked, well-connected corporation with an army of government lobbyists. Second, and most importantly, there can never be justification for political manipulation of the rule of law. There is no reason good enough. Mr. Trudeau might not believe that, but I do. 2 weeks ago, after Ms. Wilson-Raybould's detailed and compelling testimony to the Justice Committee, I called on Justin Trudeau to resign. I stand by that call today, because the Justin Trudeau we saw today is the real Justin Trudeau, a Prime Minister who can't manage his own office, let alone the affairs of a great nation. A Prime Minister who views political interference in the criminal justice system as a routine matter of government operation. And a Prime Minister who will readily trample the Constitution and the rule of law to win elections and to help his friends. Justin Trudeau might not see anything wrong with any of that, but Canadians do, and so do I. For generations, Canada has shone as an example of good government to the rest of the world. People come to Canada from countries without the rule of law, where political leaders run the justice system and where the law doesn't apply to you if you know the right people. They come to Canada to escape that. But now, this is the very path that Justin Trudeau is taking us down. And if he doesn't do the right thing and step aside, Canadians will determine his fate this fall. Well, what we saw today was a complete phony act of fake sincerity from Justin Trudeau, as we've seen, quite frankly, during his entire time in this office. He had an opportunity today to show some leadership, to accept responsibility for what he himself has done. And instead, he chose to duck and hide. He sent his best friend and personal advisor to committee to deliver a message for him that today he largely repeated. We've called on him to appear before the Justice Committee so that he can answer questions directly from parliamentarians. He continues to refuse to do that. And I'll also point out that not only did he remove Ms. Wilson-Raybould from her position, after holding her up as an example of the type of ministers that he wanted to give prominent roles in his government, but he continues to keep the gag order in place that prevents her from fully detailing the events that surrounded her removal from the post of Attorney General, leading up to her ultimate resignation. So it's quite clear that Justin Trudeau, when it comes to openness and transparency, says one thing and does another. When he talks about respecting the contributions of women in his cabinet, again, says one thing and does another. He's just completely insincere on this, and he has broken trust with Canadians.
Mr. Scheer, what's the Conservatives' playbook to get action on this file, or answers to get to the bottom of this, and to come to a resolution as we see fit for Canadians?
Well, as you know, over the past 4 weeks, we've been using every tool at our disposal to shine the light of day on the scandal. And from the beginning, Justin Trudeau has acted like someone who has something to hide. We saw it again today with his refusal to answer direct questions about his role. We see it continuing with his refusal to lift the gag order off Ms. Wilson-Raybould, allowing her to give a full accounting of the events that surrounded her removal, the removal of her position. And we attempted to call a public inquiry. Liberals used the majority to vote that down. We attempted to force Justin Trudeau to appear himself before the Justice Committee. He used his majority to vote that down. More and more Liberal MPs are expressing their concern at the undemocratic nature that Justin Trudeau is using to deal with this scandal. So we're going to continue to use every tool at our disposal, whether at the Justice Committee, in the House of Commons, but most importantly, by urging those Liberal MPs who have the power, as Ms. Wilson-Raybould did, to stand up and speak truth to power, to send that signal that Justin Trudeau is not entitled to be the Prime Minister of Canada when he breaks that faith, that surely the government of Canada is bigger than any one individual. They have that opportunity. And if they don't, then Canadians will remind them of that this October. Absolutely. Justin Trudeau has carefully stage managed this entire affair, only allowing the truth to come out in little drips and drabs, only after being dragged, kicking and screaming. Initially, he used his majority on the Justice Committee to block Conservative attempts to summon key witnesses. And the point you made about the gag order on Jody-Wilson is fundamental to this scandal. She has clearly indicated that there are more details that need to come out for Canadians to fully understand the gravity of the situation. And yet, Mr. Trudeau refuses to allow her to speak. He is continuing to hide behind the cabinet privilege that he claims. He also is very limited in where Ms. Wilson-Raybould can give her testimony, preventing her from speaking to the public and to the media. So it's another sign, another proof point that Justin Trudeau is continuing to act like someone who has something to hide. Another reason why Canadians are rightly losing trust and losing faith in Justin Trudeau.
I think, like many Canadians, I was quite disappointed. The Attorney General's testimony and her detailed account of what happened is something that Canadians believe. And Canadians had hoped that maybe Mr. Trudeau would apologize for the way Ms. Wilson-Raybould was treated, maybe apologize for the pressure that was improperly placed on her, but we didn't see an apology. We didn't see really an admission of fault. We saw kind of a sidestep, collateral kind of comments that were made. It didn't really get to the heart of the matter. We've got two senior ministers that resigned. We've got Ms. Wilson-Raybould and Ms. Philpott, both of them pointing to serious concerns about political interference and not having trust in Mr. Trudeau and his government. This needs to be addressed. Canadians need to get to the bottom of this, and that's why we're calling for a public inquiry, to have an independent judge appointed to assess all the facts, something that's outside of the committee, which is controlled by a Liberal majority, to get to the heart of the matter, to make sure that Canadians can have confidence that their government is working in their interest, not in the interest of their well-connected, powerful friends. It's first off, it's not just my opinion. Canadians believe Ms. Wilson-Raybould. And if you look at her account, it's detailed, it's precise, it's lots of details. And what she's providing is basically a lot of evidence to suggest that there's political interference. And what we're hearing from Prime Minister Trudeau and his office is not the same level of detail, not the same level of clarity, and essentially pointing out gaps in what they know. Mr. Butt's testimony had massive gaps that essentially left out the details that Ms. Wilson-Raybould spoke to. So really, there's not two versions of the story. There's Ms. Wilson-Raybould's story, which is clear, which is detailed, and we've got a Prime Minister Trudeau and his office that are not actually telling the full story and telling what's actually happened. Given the resignation of Ms. Philpott and given Ms. Wilson-Raybould's testimony, it's clear that the only way for us to get to the real heart of the matter is to have a public inquiry with the independence of a judge that's appointed that can actually look at this matter independently and assess all the evidence and get to the heart of what's going on. I do. I believe the Prime Minister should have apologized, and that might have restored some confidence. And after the remarks that he made today, he didn't really address any of the concerns that Canadians had. The Canadians feel like Ms. Wilson-Raybould was mistreated. They felt like the pressure on her was inappropriate. Her testimony is incredibly solid and credible. Given all of what has occurred, particularly with the resignation of Ms. Philpott, we should have saw an apology today. We should have saw an admission of wrongdoing, that something had gone wrong and it should not have happened. And Mr. Trudeau should have taken responsibility instead of putting blame on other people.
So you didn't consider today at all that there was an admission of mistakes made on this file?
He didn't. He seemed to blame other people. Mr. Trudeau seemed to say that other people should have known, or he didn't know about things that other people might have known, but they didn't tell him about it. Didn't seem to me a moment of leadership. Leadership is to take responsibility when things don't go well and mistakes are made. Take responsibility and then commit to a course of action to fix it. At this point, we don't see the Prime Minister taking responsibility, so Canadians have no confidence that he'll change his course of action. In fact, Canadians will continue to believe that he'll work in the interest of those who are powerful and well-connected instead of working in the interest of Canadians, and nothing he has said so far has in any way dissuaded folks from that belief.